Namo Buddhaya, 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 Namo Buddhaya.
All right. Once again, a very good morning on this special Poya Day. We are very fortunate to have Venerable Ajahn Brahmali here. He is no stranger to Sri Lanka. He was here from, I think, 13th onwards, and there was a meditation retreat in Kandy, and he just returned last afternoon. And on behalf of the Ajahn Brahm Society, Sri Lanka, I welcome all of you for this great event. For formality's sake, though it is not necessary, Ajahn Brahmali got exposed to Buddhism in his 20s, if I remember correct, when he went to Japan. And then he studied at Amaravati as a Upasaka, and then after listening to Ajahn Brahm, he went to Australia, and the rest is history. And what you will discover with Ajahn Brahmali is he's so well versed on sutras, and he has done so much research. And he not only explains sutras very well, he inspires and invites us to listen to sutras as if Buddha speaks to ourselves today. And I'm sure you will have the same experience with him today. Over to you, Bhante.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for that kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here in Sri Lanka again. I was here last time 5 years ago. And there's something wonderful about coming to a Buddhist country, because I live in the wild wilderness of Australia. There's very little Buddhism in Australia, and it's nice to kind of feel part of society. And it's wonderful to look out on a crowd like today, everyone wearing white, everyone doing the traditional Buddhist thing that we have been doing for, 2,500 years, or whatever it is. So very wonderful to be here again. And also to go into the country to see the greenery. When you live in Australia, it's a bit like living in the middle of the desert, and so this is really wonderful to be here. So for the talk on this Poya Day, very auspicious for me to be in Sri Lanka on the Poya Day. Don't know how that happened. Maybe it is just kind of the one of those coincidences of the world. Yeah, you end up being here on the Poya Day. What a wonderful thing that is. And for this Dhamma talk this morning, I'm going to talk about the idea of right view, samma ditthi. Is that okay? Any objections? Get a last chance to object? Okay, no one objecting. Okay, good. Otherwise, not sure what would happen. So I'm going to talk about the idea of right view. And to start out, the idea of right view, I think we need to begin with the Buddha. And first of all, right view is extraordinarily important. And it's very difficult to underestimate the power of right view on so many aspects of what Buddhism is like, on the Buddhist path, and all of these things. Right view, and this is what I would like to show you this morning, is that right view is essential for the sila. Yeah, if you want to live really well, right view is absolutely fundamental. One thing that right view supports, and this is often, I think, maybe not appreciated enough, it supports meditation practice. When you have a right view, it enhances your meditation. And then, of course, right view also takes you all the way to the end of the Buddhist path as well. So right view is extremely powerful. And I want to show you today how you can develop that right view, how you can take it with you to the various stages of the practice and make it something very powerful in your life. So if you are afraid of the power of right view, now is the chance to leave before it's too late. Once you get right view, there's no turning back. You know that? It's kind of scary, isn't it? Once you see things in the right way, then it kind of drives you forward. You have no choice anymore. You're heading in one direction. Yeah, once the right view is there, then the flow of the Dhamma, the power of the Dhamma takes you forward. So anyway, I have warned you. You had the chance to leave. I'm very glad no one left. That would be terrible if everyone left, right? I'm not sure what I would do if that was the case. Talk to myself or something. Anyway, so right view begins with the Buddha. It begins, the Buddha in the suttas is called the loke chakku, the eye in the world. And the idea, of course, with the Buddha is that he sees the world as it actually is. He understands the nature of what it is to be a human being. And then, having understood that nature, what it is to be a human being, he passes that on to the rest of us. So we should be incredibly grateful to the Buddha, because the Buddha allows us to understand nature, to understand our lives, to understand what is the meaning, the purpose of existence. He shows us this and then allows our own lives to be meaningful, to get out of all the problems of life and all of these things. That's a marvelous gift to humanity. And I was speaking to someone recently, and they said that one of the beautiful experience they had in their life was whenever they understood that someone has understood more than them, and they felt so grateful that there are people in the world who have a deeper understanding, a deeper insight, deeper meditation, and can show the way for everyone else. If you understand that, piti, happiness, arises in your heart as a consequence. It's a wonderful thing. And this is what the Buddha Nusati is about. This is why we offer flowers to the Buddha. This is why we do the Anjali to the Buddha. This is why we bow down, because of that Buddha Nusati. It's a beautiful thing. And sometimes we forget the power of the Buddha. We forget that the real teacher in our life is the Buddha. He is the unsurpassed satta, the unsurpassed teacher of the world. What does that mean? And what it means is that when the Buddha speaks, when you read the suttas of the Buddha, it is like the Buddha is talking to you. Yeah, the Buddha, at that point, when you read the suttas, the Buddha becomes your teacher. And what should you do when the teacher is talking? You should listen. But what I find is so extraordinary, even though the Buddha is our teacher, even though we should listen to the Buddha in this way, the reality is that many people don't really listen. The reality is that many people, when the Buddha says there is rebirth, the Buddha says, yeah. People say, yeah, that's just an old ancient belief, yeah. Who cares about rebirth these days? We live in the modern times. We have to kind of get rid of the baggage of history, all these cultural accretions that have come into our lives. Check it out and get real. Yeah, this is kind of rebirth is not true. And this is kind of quite common in the West. Actually, lots of people in the West do believe in rebirth. But many people reject it in this way. And I know that there are Sri Lankans too who reject rebirth. Anyone here who rejects the idea of rebirth, who thinks it's complete nonsense? It's kind of scary to raise your hand, isn't it? You don't have to raise your hand. It's more like rhetorical questions, so you don't have to kind of show where you stand in this particular case. But to me, the point is, if this is what the Buddha says, we should take it very, very seriously. We often ask, what is the evidence for rebirth? And people will say, you have the evidence of children remembering their past lives. You have the evidence of near-death experiences. You have the evidence of people remembering through meditation their past lives. You have all of these kind of supernormal phenomena and all of these kind of things happening. And they say this is the evidence for rebirth. And yes, maybe it is evidence for the rebirth. But that is not the most important evidence. We forget what is the most important evidence for rebirth. And the most important evidence is that the Buddha said there is rebirth. That is the most important evidence. Everything else pales in comparison. And I am often surprised, we go to school, and at school you listen to the teacher, and the teacher will tell you various things about the world. The teacher will tell you about the Second World War. The teacher will tell you 1 + 1 is 2. Remember that in the old days, long time ago, teacher said 1 + 1 is 2. What do you say? Do you say, yes sir, yes ma'am? Or do you say, I don't believe a word of it. There's no Second World War. Show me the proof that there was a Second World War. I can't see it with my own eyes. Why should I believe there's a Second World War? Is that what you think? Or do you say, yes sir, if you say so, probably there was a Second World War. You say, yes sir, yes ma'am, because why would the teacher lie to you? They have no interest in lying to you. They are there to educate you. But remember that the ordinary teacher in school, they have a salary. They are reading from books. They don't really know themselves whether there was a Second World War or not. What they tell you could very well be wrong. Maybe there was no Second World War. It's a crazy idea, but maybe. Who knows? It's very hard to really pin it down. Maybe 1 + 1 is not actually 2. And you can probably come up with some reasons. I have a mathematician monk here with me. He can probably prove to you very easily why 1 + 1 is not 2. Yeah, I'm sure he can. So this might be wrong. But when the Buddha teaches us rebirth, that cannot be wrong. The Buddha is a far more important teacher than the teacher you have in primary school or at university or whatever. If you're going to believe any teacher, you should believe the Buddha. The Buddha has the perfect integrity. The Buddha has the insight into the nature of humanity. The Buddha has the deepest kind of wisdom. So you should reject 1 + 1 is 2 a long time before you reject the insight of the Buddha, like rebirth. Rebirth is far more certain than 1 + 1 is 2. Rebirth is far more certain than the Second World War, because it is coming from the highest kind of teacher with perfect integrity and perfect insight. This is the right way to think about this. And then you are on the right track. I think the reason why we often get this wrong is because the Buddha seems to be a long time in the past, 2,500 years ago. The Buddha comes from a different culture, a long time ago. And because of that, we tend to think that there is like a separation between us and the Buddha. But this is the wrong way to think about it. The Buddha was a human being. We are human beings. The Buddha's culture, people have always been roughly the same. We should get away from this idea of being biased by the present, somehow making the present more important than the past. People have always been the same. And so we need to close the gap between us and the Buddha and make it as if the Buddha is present with us right now. Then we are thinking in the right way. Then we can start to take the Buddha as a teacher, just like any other teacher, but with far more credibility because of the power of the Buddha. So this is the way to think about the Sammaditthi and the gift that the Buddha has given the world. Sometimes in the West, or even in Sri Lanka maybe, we say that the idea of rebirth is a cultural view. And that kind of the idea of rejecting rebirth, well, that is the modern view. It's not cultural. It is based on reality and all of these kind of things. But no, it's actually the other way around. It's the modern view that rejects rebirth. That is the cultural view. And the belief in rebirth is not cultural at all. The belief in rebirth is based on an insight into reality. And insight into reality is by definition not cultural. So it's the other way around. So remember, when people say that rebirth is cultural, no, it's the other way around. It's a lack of belief in rebirth that is cultural. It is something that have arisen in modern society based on cause and conditions. It is not based on insight into reality. It is based just on how our culture has developed. If you ask a scientist, if you ask a philosopher, there is no proof anywhere that there is no rebirth. Then you are thinking in the right way. Am I making any sense to anyone? Or do you think I'm just a hopeless, naive monk? Anyway, that's how I look at things. And that's where it begins, the idea of right view. This is how we should think about the world. So when we read the suttas, we start to see the world according to how the Buddha saw the world. Rebirth is part of that. Karma is part of that. But it's only a small part of that. What we need to do is to kind of grapple with these ideas and to see what they actually mean for us personally. What does it mean if there is rebirth? What does it mean to see the world as the way the Buddha saw it? And one of the things I will talk about now is the problems that the world is going through. Right now there seems to be so many problems in the world. And I know that right here in Sri Lanka you have been through some very difficult economic times, a lot of suffering, a lot of problems because of that. But it's not just Sri Lanka. You look around the world, if you read the news. Do you read the news? So if you don't read the news, I don't blame you. Sometimes best not to read the news. Turn the news off, close your eyes, watch the breath. Far better than reading the news sometimes. But sometimes we still read the news. Sometimes we can't avoid hearing about these things. And of course, in the world there is wars going on in Ukraine, in the Middle East, many other places as well. There is all kind of environmental things going on, climate change, too much plastic in the world, too many, we produce too much stuff and we degrade our environment. There is refugee crisis going around the world. This latest one is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence may destroy humanity once and for all. Is that bad, to destroy humanity? That's an interesting question, right? We think that destroying humanity is bad. But, from a Buddhist point of view, it is the beginning of humanity is worse than the end of humanity. So people often say, it's not the end of the world. And I say, no, that's the wrong way of thinking. You should say, it's not the beginning of the world, because the beginning of the world, that's the problem. So I often think, if you destroyed humanity, well, it depends. If you are a good Buddhist, maybe it's okay. Anyway, it's a sidetrack, So AI looks scary, right? And all of these kind of things. So there's all these things in our life that looks so difficult, looks like the future may be imperiled in a certain way. And you can see how the young generations are reacting to this. The young generations are sometimes feeling sad and depressed, and sometimes they blame us. We are the older generation, right? We are the parents. Not me, I'm not a parent, but I'm sure many of you are parents. And they blame us, you are destroying the world. What's going to happen to us? What is going to happen to the future, is what they say. The world is going down the drain. And so they feel that the future, in many ways, is destroyed. And this is kind of part of the problem of mental problems, of depression, of sadness in our society. But Buddhism has the answer to this. Buddhism has the answer to everything here. Buddhism has the answer to everything here. That's kind of extraordinary to understand that. And once you take on board the Buddhist principles, all of the fear of the future evaporates. It's gone. It just disappears. And the reason for that is because our future, according to the Buddhist teachings, does not depend so much on what happens in the external environment. It does not depend on whether there is climate change. It does not depend so much on whether there is wars. It does not even depend so much on whether there is artificial intelligence or not. All of these things are not really what actually creates our future. And we all know, according to the Buddha, what creates your future is the quality of your heart. It is whether you live a life of kindness, whether you live a kind of generosity, whether you have metta, whether you have compassion, whether you have wisdom, whether you have peace in your heart. These are the things that create your future. This is what matters. And the external world, yes, it matters a little bit, but it matters only a small part compared to how we live our life. That is where your life is created. And once you understand that, it gives you hope. Okay, there is wars in the world, but actually I can bypass all those wars. I can bypass all the economic crises. And if the artificial intelligence comes and it wants to exterminate humanity, I can even deal with that. This is the beauty of these Buddhist teachings. It gives you hope. It gives you a sense of positivity. All you have to do is turn your life around in the right direction. Live according to the Buddhist principles. And as you do so, your future is guaranteed. Isn't that great? It's such a beautiful message. It brings, and I don't know why no one is saying that to these young people who are despairing. We should tell them, right? Where are you, all the young people? I don't see that many young people here. We had to bring the young people to the Dhamma Talk. The whole top there should be full of young people, really, so we can tell them the future is okay here. So anyway, that's kind of the way it goes. And then the future is okay in this life. It is okay in this life because when you live well, you become more resilient. You have the resources inside of you, the power of the mind, the power of goodness, the power of joy and of happiness to be able to live and to be happy regardless of the external things. One of the things that I always found so extraordinary is that when you look at the war zones in the world and all the problems, some people say they are more happy during war than when there is no war. And the reason for that is because during a war, people reject all the external things, all the things that we normally count upon to make us happy. We understand they can no longer make us happy, and instead we rely on our inner resources. We become more compassionate. We start to work together when there is war. We start to actually live in harmony with each other. And this is so difficult and so rare that people feel more happy during war than when there's no war. Some people do, not everybody. That's kind of very interesting and very powerful. So remember this. It makes you more resilient. It gives you that inner sense of being independent when you live the spiritual path. And of course, because rebirth is so important in Buddhism, as I have just said, trust the Buddha. Yeah, the Buddha is the greatest teacher of all time. Because rebirth is so important, it certainly secures your future life as well. So why be sad? Don't be sad. Instead, be kind. That is the right way. Yeah, isn't that a beautiful idea? I don't know, I find it so uplifting. I'm so grateful for the Buddha to give us these teachings because he understands how life actually works. So this is the first instance to show you the power of right view. It's powerful, right? Don't you agree? Yeah, anyone who doesn't agree, please raise your hand. You're all on the same page as I am. Thank you so much. That's wonderful to see that. So, next, this is the first part of right view. The next part of right view is that if you understand, again, the world in the right way, you become incredibly attuned to living in the right way, to speaking in the right way, to acting in the right way, and also to thinking in the right way. You attune your life to living morally. Yes? Okay. So you start to attune your life more to living in the right way, yeah? Right view guides you on the right track. I've just been showing how right view leads you to live well in one way, but right view also immediately makes you a more kind and good person. Every time you're about to speak, every time you're about to act, every time you're about to think a thought, right view tells you what you are supposed to do and what you are supposed to avoid. And I will give you a simile for what this is like. Sometimes on the Buddhist path we think that what is required for us to live morally is mindfulness. Yeah, sati. We think sati is the significant thing because if you are mindful, then you will always be aware of what you're supposed to do. So right now, am I mindful? Okay, am I speaking good things? Am I saying anything bad? I don't know if you think I'm saying anything bad. Maybe telling a little bit too many, saying too many stupid, silly things. But that's just the way I am conditioned, and I apologize for that. So you are aware right away of what you are supposed to do. This is the general idea of how to be kind, how to live well. Having sati, having mindfulness. But as many of you will know, sati often is not enough. Because even though you have a high degree of sati, in your daily life, in your ordinary dealings with the world, you lose that mindfulness so easily. Yeah, because you are busy, you have so many things to do, you probably have a job, you have children, you have hobbies, you have things that you have to do, you have if you have a mobile phone, yeah, you're busy all the time. You'd have no second free if you have a mobile phone, because as soon as there's nothing to do, mobile phone. Yeah, so you're busy 24/7 these days, and then you dream at night, you dream about all the things you did during the day. Oh, the dukkha just goes on and on and on. So often we lose our sati. Yeah, and because we lose our sati, then we cannot really rely always on the sati to show us what we should be doing. And what I'm going to prove to you right now is that far more powerful than sati, for you to be able to control your behavior, for you to be able to live well at all times. Not sati, but right view. Right view is the thing that really matters the most. And I will prove this to you right now. Okay, so imagine here in Colombo, right? You go to one of the really busy streets. There's kind of cars coming all the time, yeah? Now, if you come to that street, you have to cross the street. There is no pedestrian light, there is no kind of zebra crossing, nothing like that. It's just you have to walk across the street. There's all kind of cars. When you come to that street, what do? Do you just walk into the street? Or do you look left and right, first of all? Even the person with the least mindfulness in the entire universe, even the person who is completely absorbed in their mobile phone, texting, walking, like you see people like zombies walking along the street with a mobile phone. I'm sure you have that here in Sri Lanka as well. This is what we have in the West. Everyone is looking at the mobile phone all the time. Yeah, even the person who has zero mindfulness, no, I shouldn't say zero, that's too little, 1% mindfulness will always stop at that street, look left, look right before they cross. Why is it that they look left and right before they cross, even if they have no mindfulness? And the answer is right view. They have the view that the street is dangerous. And because that view is so deeply imprinted in your mind, you will always look left and right, even if you have almost no mindfulness. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's obvious, right? This is the way we are. And what that means is that right view is far more powerful to guide you than mindfulness. If you have very powerful right view, it means that you will always be doing the right thing, because right view will tell you it is dangerous. The street is dangerous. If you walk into that street, you will die. That is what right view says. And so what happens then is that you stop. Every time you want to speak, every time you want to act, every time you want to think, you stop first of all. You look left and right. You know this is a dangerous thing. If you get your speech wrong, if you get your actions wrong, actually it is dangerous. And so you get it right instead. But what is interesting to me is that we tend to think that crossing the street, that is really dangerous because you could die. And we tend to think that, if you get angry or you get greedy, that is not so dangerous. Actually, it's the wrong way to think. It is far more dangerous to get angry than to cross the street. If you cross the street, what could happen? You could die. Big deal, right? You die, okay, so you are a good person, you get reborn again, you carry on afterwards. Dying is not the problem. Dying is just another stage in our life. Everyone has to die. You're going to die anyway. You just kind of die a bit earlier. Dying is not the real issue in Buddhism. The real issue in Buddhism is our trajectory. It is where we are heading. It is what actually happens to us in this life. That is what really matters. If you die with a good heart, you're going to go to a good destination in the future. If you die with a bad heart, then of course it's going to be troublesome for you. This is what matters. This is what is important. If you act in the wrong way, you are letting yourself down. You're on a trajectory to negative consequences in the future. That is far more dangerous than dying. This is what we get wrong sometimes in our life. We get things kind of upside down. We think that those things are dangerous that are not really so dangerous. And those things that are truly dangerous, we don't understand that they are dangerous. So how we live our lives, that is what really matters. That is the most important thing. And that is the right view that the Buddha gives to us. It's urgent to live well. It is urgent to do the right thing. Now is the only time you have. The Buddha gives a very powerful simile for this. He says that you should live as if your hair is on fire. Okay, not sure about that one, but your hair is on fire. Maybe for a monk, if you're, I don't know what can do as a monk, but anyway, you should live as if your skull is on fire, maybe. I don't know what it is, but there's something burning up here, and if your head is burning, if it's your hair or whatever, it is kind of urgent. What do you do if your hair is on fire? Do you say, chillax, I'll put out the fire later on. It's not really urgent, it's just a small little fire. Yawn, for hair is on fire. No, right? If your hair is on fire, it becomes incredibly urgent. You either put out the fire now, or you die, basically. And the Buddha says this is how we should think, in terms of our actions, in terms of our speech, even in terms of how we think about the world. It is really, really urgent. And the reason why it is so urgent is because the future is far more uncertain than we think. We have a tendency, we are biased as human beings. We have a tendency to think that the future will be largely the same as the present. We can kind of see things carrying on in this way. But actually, that is always a misunderstanding. When the economic crisis comes to Sri Lanka, people grieve, people are sad. Why? Because they didn't expect it to happen. That was your mistake. You should have been expecting it. The Buddha told you, anicca, vaya dhamma sankhara apamadena sampadeta, you find in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Now it is everything always comes to an end. So of course we should expect these things. That is where we go wrong. We don't expect all of these things to happen. The world is so uncertain. Underneath the surface, things are always changing. I like the idea of the tectonic plates. You know the science about tectonic plates in the world. The idea of tectonic plates is that the crust of the earth, the surface of the earth, is always moving. It is divided into a variety of plates, and they move compared to each other. And then as they move, tension builds up. And that tension builds up slowly, slowly. This is the anicca happening out of sight. You cannot see it happening. And it builds up and builds up and builds up until eventually you have an earthquake, or you have a volcano, or you have a tsunami. And then everyone is shocked. Oh no, so many people died because of these things. But the anicca is always there, building up under the surface. And then suddenly it comes crashing through. And this is true in all areas of our life, how the anicca always builds up in this way. And then it comes crashing through. It comes crashing through as an economic crisis. It comes crashing through as a war. It comes crashing through as an asteroid hitting the earth. It comes crashing through as artificial intelligence, doing whatever it might do. We don't know what it is. So the future is extremely uncertain. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know whether there will be Buddhism in our next life. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Everything is so unreliable. That is the right view. This is the idea of vaya dhamma sankhara. This is the word of the Buddha, Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Vaya dhamma sankhara. All things, all phenomena in the world have the nature to come to an end. And that end can come very quickly. Remember that uncertainty here. That is the right view. That is what impels you to live well. Not tomorrow, not the week after, not in an hour, not in the next minute, but now. Now. This moment, right now. What is the right thing to do right now? Where is your mind right now? Are you having a good mind state at this moment? Are you having a sense of metta and peace? Are you having a sense of maybe understanding the teachings? Are you fault-finding the things I say? Where is your mind right now? Now is the time to have the right mind state. It is now or never. That is really the reality of the Buddha. If we don't do it now, when are you going to do it? This is the only time you have to live in the right way. This is what right view does to you. So it is extraordinarily powerful, and when you live in this way, then whenever you come to the crossroads of actions in your life, doing this, doing that, you always look left first, you always look right first, and then, after looking, then you decide what you should be doing. This is the power of right view, far more powerful than mindfulness, because right view is what informs the mind. Then the mindfulness arises, then you know what you have to do. Right view is the fundamental aspect of this path. So get more right view. How do you get more right view? Listening to the Buddha, number one. Yeah, the Buddha is the one who had right view. Listen to talks that relate to the word of the Buddha. Yeah, don't go to talks that talk about all kind of other things. Come back to the word of the Buddha, and then as you do that, you build up the right view. Reflect on these teachings. Remember these teachings. Yeah, reflecting on the Dhamma is such an important part of this. What does it mean for me when the Buddha says, Vaya Dhamma Sankhara? What does it mean? It means I have to do the right thing. It means now is the only opportunity. You reflect on these things. You internalize them. You make them part of who you are. You imbue your psychology with these teachings. It becomes who you are as a person after a while. Then it becomes powerful. You feel these teachings in your heart. Because we are driven by feelings as human beings. We are driven by emotions. We are not driven by ideas. Ideas are the things you sit around, in a kind of nice armchair, smoking a pipe. Avidya, Pachaya, Sankhara. Very interesting. It doesn't do anything to you. It's just something in your mind. You need to make it visceral. You need to make it something that you feel. Then it becomes powerful. If you start to feel a little bit afraid, then you feel something, then you act upon that because you know that there is grounds for having a little bit of anxiety about the future. Not much, just enough anxiety to make you act. That's all you really need. You don't want to be paralyzed by these things, but you want to understand the danger and what is at stake. Then you are on the right track. So this is how right view makes you a better person. This is how right view gives you the impetus to have sila in your life, to understand sila in the right way. When I say sila, I mean pancha sila. When I say sila, I mean being kind in life. Yes, sila is not just about not doing bad things. It's about doing kind things. It's about being generous. It's about saying kind things to the people around you. Peya vacha, piya vacha, kind speech. All of these things are part of this. And you make every moment matter. Every moment is important. So I'm glad no one has left yet. I'm always a bit concerned when I give a Dhamma talk, people start leaving. I think maybe Sri Lankans are very polite. They don't leave, yeah? Even if you talk rubbish, they still sit in the seat and listen. So I really appreciate that. In the West, it's more like people don't like it, they just walk out. Yeah, it's true. That's what happens. And you sit there, you're giving a talk, and you see people walking out, and you think, "Jeepers, what did I say?" People are walking. Of course, it's got nothing to do with what you say. People have an appointment, or they have to go, or whatever, so they leave. That's what they do. So anyway, thank you for staying. So this is how right view supports the idea of sila. But for those of you who are interested also in the deeper aspect, this is the most important part of this talk, because being kind and caring and a good person, this is what most of us should aim for in this life. But some of you may also be interested in meditation practice, yeah? And one of the very interesting things about bhavana, chitta bhavana, the development of the mind, is that too depends on right view. And people don't often realize this. People often think that chitta bhavana, again, depends on you have to be mindful. Okay, be mindful. Be mindful in all the daily activities, yeah? When you talk, be mindful. When you listen, be mindful. When you wash the dishes, be mindful. When you go to the toilet, be mindful. When you speak, all of these things, when you are silent, be mindful. Then I will be ready for meditation practice. But the Buddha actually says in the suttas, the Buddha, right? You notice how I say the Buddha all the time. That is what is interesting to me. What the Buddha says in the suttas is not that mindfulness leads to mindfulness. He doesn't really say that anywhere. What the Buddha says leads to mindfulness is two things. Sila. I've already talked about sila. This is a very important part of what leads to mindfulness. Why does sila lead to mindfulness? Because when you feel good about yourself, then you tend to want to be present. Make the present moment the pleasant moment. It's one of those catchphrases from Ajahn Brahm. Ajahn Brahm is my teacher, so I often just repeat what he says. So I apologize for that. But make the present moment the pleasant moment. Because when the present moment is pleasant, you want to be present. You don't want to be in the past, you don't want to be in the future, because you're happy right here and now. But the other aspect of that supports your meditation according to the suttas, if you want to see which sutta, go to the Samyutta Nikaya. Samyutta Nikaya, go to the Satipatthana Samyutta. Samyutta number 47 in the Samyutta Nikaya, Sutta number 4, I think, something like that. I can't remember right now exactly which Sutta number. And if you go there, you will find exactly what I'm talking about, in case you don't trust me, because my memory could be faulty. I would not recommend you to trust anyone too much. Check it out for yourself. And what it says there is that the other aspect that supports meditation is called Ujjuka Ditti. And Ujjuka Ditti is just another way of saying Samma Ditti. Ujju means straight. The word Ujju in Pali, Rujju in Sanskrit, is related to the English word straight and right. It's the same word. These are Indo-European languages. English is related to Sinhala, right? It's the same language group. It's related to Pali, it's related to Sanskrit. They're all related to each other. And so for that reason, Ujju actually is related to the word straight and right. So right view, straight view, which is kind of interesting here. So that is the support for meditation. Specifically, says the Buddha, when you have right view, it enhances your meditation practice. So why is that? And the reason for that is because a very important part of right view is the idea of where we should look for security, where we should look for happiness. And if you go to the Noble Eightfold Path, Samma Ditti leads to Samma Sankappa. Samma Sankappa, one of them is the Nekama Sankappa. Nekama is the idea of letting go, the idea of renouncing, the idea of giving up. And that idea of giving up, that idea of renouncing is necessary for the meditation to work. In fact, you could argue that the whole process of meditation, and please stay for the meditation afterwards if you wish, the whole process of meditation is a process of letting go, is a process of nekama. How can we let go? People often say that the idea of letting go is like this mysterious thing. You just sit down and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But actually, it is not that mysterious at all. The idea of letting go, the ability to let go of things, it arises from understanding where to look for meaning, where to look for happiness, and what to reject. And the more we understand that, the more ability we have in letting go. And so the idea here is to understand that the world outside, which means the world of the five senses, the kama guna, or just karma if you like, that world around us is inherently problematic. That world is always going to be unstable. That world is always going to be unreliable. And the more you understand the unreliability of that world, the more you let it go, the more you don't hold on. So if you watch the news, if you read about the news, if you happen to be so unfortunate that you come across the news, I don't really recommend people to read too much news, because really it is kind of only meant to make you depressed and sad sometimes. But if you happen to see the news, use it in this particular way. Try to understand the world from the perspective of the Buddha. When you see that there is another war in Ukraine, you think, oh yeah, of course there is a war in Ukraine. I expected a war in Ukraine. Did you expect the war in Ukraine beforehand? Probably not, right? Because it's hard to expect these kind of things. Did you expect the war in the Middle East? Did you expect the economic crisis here in Sri Lanka? Did you expect the problems in the environment? Did you expect the tsunami in 2004 or whenever it was? We don't expect these things. but we should really expect them. We should expect the unexpected. That is kind of the paradox at the heart of this. We should expect the unexpected. That is what it means to understand anicca. When you expect the unexpected, that means you have understood what the problem really is like. So when you see the war in Ukraine, it is not that you expected that specific war, but it is that you expected something strange to happen, yeah? So when you see the war again, you think, yeah, of course, this is samsara, this is the reality of the human realm. And the more you take that on board, that these are the realities, the less interest you have in that realm. And the less interest that you have in the realm of the five senses, in the world outside, the more the mind turns instead to the spiritual path. It turns to the world within, to your mind, to the qualities you have inside. That is where the mind turns instead. So if we use the bad news of the world in a good way, if we are wise about what happens in the world outside of us, then it helps us in our meditation because we turn away from the five senses. We don't think so much about that world anymore. We don't sit in our meditation just thinking about, oh, I have these problems at work I need to resolve. I have these problems in my family. I need to resolve that. Because we know that that is the world of the five senses. It is endless. There is another problem waiting behind, another war waiting behind the Ukraine war, another tsunami waiting behind the last tsunami, another, we don't know what is going to happen next. Expect the unexpected. Turn away from the world of the five senses. Turn towards the spiritual path instead. That is what these things are telling us. They are staring in your face, telling you this world is not really worth investing in. Don't invest your resources, your time, your actions too much in that world, because you will always, always, always be disappointed. Always, always, always be let down by that world every single time. That is the problem. And so this is the idea of using the world outside, to think about it, understanding it in the right way. But it's not just the world far away. It is also your personal world, which also is touched by this thing we call the tilakkhana anicca, dukkha, anatta. Yeah, anitya, how do you say it here in Sinhala? Anitya, dukkha, anatman. It is always controlled by these tilakkhana. These are the things, yeah? These are the problems in our life. And our ordinary life, not just the world outside, but also our personal life is also tinged by these things. We don't know when death is going to come. We don't know when sickness is going to arise. Yeah? We don't know when we're going to lose our job. We don't know when we're going to have a divorce. We don't know if we're going to be a Buddhist tomorrow. Maybe after listening to this talk, you decide, I'm never going to be a Buddhist again. Buddhism is asking too much. Okay, so this is a short story for you. My father was a businessman, and he traveled around the world. I don't think he ever came to Sri Lanka, but he traveled around the world, and he was in Malaysia at a certain point. And he was in the shipping business, so they were kind of doing some shipping deal in Malaysia. And then after the deal, they were kind of having dinner together. You know what business people are like, yeah, kind of doing silly things. They have a dinner together afterwards and chatting away. And my father was sitting next to this lady. She was kind of Chinese background. And she told my father, I don't know why she said this, but she said to my father, maybe it was to impress my father, she said, I used to be a Buddhist. Now I am a Christian. Yeah, so maybe she thought my father would be happy because she probably assumed because you look like a Westerner, you must be a Christian, right? Of course, that is completely wrong. But anyway, that's what she assumed. And so my father asked her, why did you become a Christian? And she said, it's much easier. Yeah, Buddhism, too many demands, too difficult. Yeah, too many precepts, too much anicca, too much dukkha. Christianity, believe in God, end of story. Very easy. It's a much better deal. She was a businesswoman. She was into good deals. Yeah, it's a better deal. Okay, that's why I'm a Christian. So be careful about those good deals. Some deals are too good to be true, right? You know, the dodgy salesman trying to sell you dodgy stuff. If the deal is too good to be true, if the you get an email saying if you send $1,000, you will get 10 million in return, yeah? Okay, don't buy into that deal. That's a dodgy kind of Nigerian. Usually they come from Nigeria, these kind of scams. In the West, we get these things all the time. Send $1,000 and we will kind of release this fund of $10 million that is kind of waiting. It just needs this kind of release mechanism. You can be part of this. Get $10 million now. And people are, lo and behold, stupid enough to buy into these things. I can't believe it sometimes. No wonder they don't become Buddhist. If you have that kind of level of delusion, how on earth are you ever going to get the right view of Buddhism? Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So this is the idea of right view, yeah? Don't take the easy way. Please try to understand what this life is like. The life has all of these negative things, all of these negative qualities. We have to understand this. Death can always be around the corner. Third World War can be around the corner. And the response to that is not to despair, is not to be sad and depressed. The response to that is always, and it's almost automatic, turn to the spiritual path. And then, when you do your meditation practice, instead of thinking about the world, instead of thinking about your family, thinking about your job and all of these kind of things, you let all that go because you understand how unreliable it is. And that enables your meditation to work. You're able to stay with the breath. You're able to find the joy of being a disciple of the Buddha. Wow, I have the Buddha as a teacher. The greatest spiritual genius in human history is my teacher. Isn't that extraordinary? I feel so lucky to have the Buddha as my teacher. And then you have the pamoja, the piti, the joy and the happiness arising in your mind. And you become peaceful because you have given up the world. You have the nekama, the letting go of the world around us. Right view drives your meditation. It makes you focus on those things that matter. And then the result of that is this beautiful meditation starts to work. The spiritual path really comes together for you in this way. This is how right view leads to meditation practice. There is another very nice little thing. I love to quote I've got 4 minutes left according to this. I'm going to use to the very last minute. A beautiful thing that you find in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha is very sick towards the very end of his life, right? He has 3 months left to live and he's really ill. And when the Buddha is very ill, Venerable Ananda is his close attendant at all times. He finds it very difficult to deal with that. And he says to the Buddha, oh, when I see your sickness, my directions are not clear to me. I cannot remember the Dhamma because, Venerable Sir, you are sick. And then the Buddha says to Venerable Ananda, haven't I told you that all things that are dear and agreeable to you must become otherwise, must become separated from you? This is one of those beautiful sayings of the Buddha, one of those things that the Buddha said every one of us should reflect on all the time. Abhinha pachiveka tabha tana sutta. Majjhima Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya 557. We just taught it on the retreat. That's why it's I remember exactly where it is. So, yeah, this is the reality. And then the Buddha says, the next thing he says is that you should find instead your refuge in the right place. You should be Attadipa, Dhammadipa. Yeah, you know this famous saying about the Buddha. And the Attadipa, the Dhammadipa, what does that mean? Well, it means, the Buddha says, the 4 Satipatthanas. What do the 4 Satipatthanas mean? It means meditation. It means watching the breath, doing anapanasati. That is what it means. It means closing your eyes, finding peace, finding joy within, the joy and the happiness that is separated from the world outside. That is your refuge, said the Buddha. The refuge is not in the world, because the world will always let you down. So all I'm saying here is always based on the word of the Buddha. If I have contradicted the word of the Buddha, please tell me off. I want to know because I am also a disciple of the Buddha and I want to do the right thing. Go within, find the security there, then you are on the right track. So this is how right view leads to meditation. And then the very last thing that right view leads to, right view leads to ultimately the very liberation from samsaric existence itself, the round of rebirth. It leads to the ending of dukkha. Right view is this beautiful, beautiful thing that when you see the world in the right way, all the way to the core, in the same way that the Buddha did, you end all the problems in your life. All dukkha disappears and you achieve the highest happiness. Paramang sukhang, as it says in the Nibbānang Paramang sukhang, as you find in the Dhammapada, that beautiful little collection of verses. That is where right view finally takes you. It takes you from the very beginning of the path, teaching you how to think about the world, how to have sila. Then it takes you through to the meditation practices and enables a meditation. And when that meditation finally really takes hold, it leads you to the profound insight into the nature of reality. And that leads you to the highest happiness in the world. And the highest happiness happens also to be the highest kind of meaning a person can have. Do you want the highest happiness, or do you want to carry on in dukkha? That is your choice. I wish you all the very best on this Poya day. That is all I have to say for today. Please stay on. We will try out these things in practice later on with some meditation and also give you a chance to ask some questions and answer. But the time has gone exactly 8:15, and so I will stop at this point. Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much, Bhante, for that wonderful sermon.